You may have realized that being healthy feels different than it did in the past now that you're over 50. If you want to maximize your health potential but don't have time to read through overwhelming pages of Google links, this is the show for you. Welcome to Healthy Tips After 50. We love doing the research, finding solutions, talking to health experts, and learning what works and what doesn't. Now, your host. She spent the last 25 years dedicated to feeling her best and is here to share her best findings with you, Susan Rosen.
Hello, everyone. This is your host, Susan Rosen. And my guest today is David Greenwalt. That's an interesting name. I forgot to ask him about that earlier. And he has a really interesting background, and he is a certified health coach and fitness expert and an author. So I'm going to let David introduce himself so that I don't screw it up.
Thank you, Susan. Thanks so much for having me on. It's a pleasure. All right, so I'll keep this intro of me really brief, but it might at least help, give a little background as to why I care so much about what I'm doing, why I'm here. I'm a certified health coach, but I'd say more importantly, I've been coaching people one way or another for over 30 years. For whatever reason, as Susan and I were talking before things got started here on the recording, something in my DNA has been fitness oriented since I was a kid. I don't know why, I don't know how, I have no idea, but it has. And so even when I was a kid in grammar school, there used to be the President's Council on Physical Fitness, and that there was the President's Physical Fitness Award that you could win if you did a certain number of tasks, and you could throw a ball a certain distance and broad jump a certain distance and whatever. And I wanted that award so bad. I'm 10 years old and I wanted that award so bad. And I'm not the athlete who played traditional sports and was on the A team. If I played those sports, I was definitely on the B team, maybe the C team. But I really wanted that physical fitness award, and I got it 2 years in a row. I was so proud. I still have the patch. Wow. I have the sticker. I have the certificate still, tucked away. Yeah. So I'm just saying it's been in me for a long, long time. When in my teens and 20s, I was actively involved in my own training for bodybuilding and powerlifting. I competed at the state level in those endeavors, and I owned a gym back then in the 80s, and I coached people then. That's really when I first started really coaching people, was the mid 80s. I was a city police officer at the time, because I have a background as a police officer. I went on to be an Illinois state trooper. Wow. But, as a police officer, when I was with the city, I also owned a gym. So in me, I've always had this business head as well. It's like and then how can I make the business world tie into my fitness passion? And, but I honestly thought I'd be a police officer my whole life, but one of the businesses really took off, and I ended up leaving the police profession. But I really liked the police profession. But anyway, so did a gym, coached people, got sent to Northwestern University here in Illinois to become a police fitness trainer, because I wanted it. The police department could see I was super passionate about it. And so I was, it created another asset for the department. Went on, started a supplement company. I don't sell any supplements now. I want to make that known. But in the 90s, I started a little supplement company, a tiny little thing in a room in my house, just so I could maybe make enough money to pay for my own protein, because I was using protein supplements. I was like, if I could just sell enough to have enough profit to pay for my own supplements. I was an Illinois state trooper at the time, and there was no internet then. It was 1992. And I started running these ads in the back of bodybuilding magazines, tiny little classified ads. And anyway, this thing grew from just me trying to make enough money that it grew to 45 employees and about 7 million in annual revenue. Wow. So that was over a course of about 6 years. And the reason I say that is, I promise it's not just let me just boast about it. No, but what happened is we had over 100,000 customers in that supplement company. And then when the internet came, two-way dialogue started. And for anybody that can remember, most of your listeners or all your listeners can probably remember when it first came in, for me, it was amazing that you could have two-way dialogue. You could talk on the phone to people, of course, and you could, but to have this two-way communication And then, so email came in and the internet, of course, came in, the web came in. And what I found is with these customers, I'm selling supplements. I'm kind of a Ralph Nader of sorts, where I'm like, I dig in and I research the supplements and I tell you which ones are not honest, and I tell you which ones are good. And I tested this supplement and it didn't have any of what they said in it. I'm doing all of those things. So my clients really trusted me. And I started to get a lot of questions, of course. Hey, Dave, I want to lose 30 pounds. I want to get in better shape. I want to lose 50 pounds. This is an email. And they'd be like, hey, can you real quick, like, it's just like, you're right. Can you real quick, just tell me real quick what the answer is to lose and keep off forever 30 to 50 pounds real quick.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
And I gave it an honest go.
Yeah, I was like, that's about it, I think.
Right. Yeah, I know. So I wrote them back and I'd be like, all right, tell me a little bit about yourself. And they write back, and then I'd try to give them what I could. But I mean, there was a lot of people that wanted my attention, and I'm running this company that's doing well, with the employees and everything. So I had a lot going on, and I thought, I am so doing them a disservice, so doing them an injustice by trying to answer these questions kind of on the back of a napkin, in a fortune cookie or a bumper sticker. Anybody can answer with the 5-word diet, as I say: eat less and exercise more. You can always just say, there's your answer. But I could find the tallest building in your city and get on a bullhorn and scream that, and 0 people are going to change if I say that, because at some level we all know.
Maybe one.
I get it.
You might get one.
You might get one. Yes. Right. And you'll be like, that one, you're like, okay, we did get one. But otherwise, no, because at some level we all kind of go like, yeah, I know. But how? And in what way? And what about all the nuance you're leaving out? And anyway, so I ended up writing a book. It's almost 500 pages. And I finished that book and had and published it. And the final version came out in 2002, and it's still out there. But what I did was, the internet was here then. By then. And so I was able to take the book and tie it into an online coaching program, really tap into that two-way communication, which I wanted, and do it in a way that was authentic to what was going to be needed. What about this? What about that? All the little nuanced things with each individual. Having the two-way communication. How do you actually track nutrition and exercising? How do you set goals? And what about this? And all the things that go into, the process as it is. So we've been doing that since 1999. The final version of my book came out in 2002. And we've been online, helping people get from some place that's typically unhealthy or a weight they don't want to be, or both, to a healthier place and or a weight that they do want to be. Often it's weight related, not always, but often, most times, in fact. And I'm just as passionate today. I've been online with what I do since 99, and I'm just as passionate today as I was then, except that I know a lot more. I think, Susan and I were talking a little bit before we went live here, and I was saying, when I think about what I knew when I was 30, 32, 34, I knew some stuff. I was passionate about it, but I almost cringe, at what, I was putting out compared to where we are now, as I'm sure anyone can understand when you've been doing something for 30 years.
Oh my God. Yes. Yes. Yeah.
Well, that was a lot. I know, but that it kind of gets us to here, and what drove me to want to do this. Yeah.
Yeah. So you had mentioned before that you've kind of, it sounds like you've kind of gone through having different businesses.
Yeah.
So what do you have now? I mean, what do you settled on that you're?
Yeah. So once I started, the book I wrote is called The Leanness Lifestyle. It's a mouthful, 2 N's and 2 S's, and it's it's like. And the program is called Leanness Lifestyle University, and the university is just to say that we're very education based. We're kind of based on an education model, but education in a bite-sized, step-by-step, day-by-day way. Not someone's going to come in and truly get a master's degree in something that, but they will get a master's degree in their own health and nutrition, but not something that they're going to take and put a plaque on their wall. It's not that kind of thing, but it is education-based. very system oriented, but also very meet each person where they are. So a person comes in and someone could be, I just had a gentleman started yesterday. He's 420 pounds. Okay.
Oh my
and
God.
he wants to lose about half that. He wants to get down to about 225. And I had somebody start today who's only 15 pounds above where they want to be. And it doesn't even have to be so much about the number, but where each person is, that person that's 15 pounds away from where they want to be, and they do 75% of the things pretty good, versus the gentleman who's got 225 pounds to lose or whatever, and he's only doing 25% of the things, that we want.
Yeah.
So meeting each person where they are and making sure they're not overwhelmed. With my program now, we have accountability, and our coaches and myself will check on people, make sure that they don't go MIA. And if they do, we're not anyone's warden. We're not going to come hunt you down, but we're going to try to make sure that you stay involved in your own journey. So that's built into it. Education's built into it, motivation, the support, everything from nutrition, exercise, goal setting, all of the things that relate to all of that. I've had a lot of time being online since 1999 to evolve the program.
Yeah.
So, everything we use is mine. I wrote and programmed everything. I didn't want to be a coder, Susan. I didn't want to. But when I first started this in 1999, what I was getting quoted for somebody to build me what I wanted was
my goodness.
Crazy. Tens of thousands of dollars. And I went, well, I can either do that or I can learn the coding. And so I coded the site initially on dial-up, no fast internet, disconnected every 5 minutes. People in the house couldn't be on the phone at the same time as I was, coding the website.
Right, absolutely.
All that stuff. And anyway, it's had so much time to evolve and mature. I would say probably like me, and evolve and mature. But anyway, that's what I'm doing. That's what we've been doing. And the program just going to continue to evolve. And I almost feel uncomfortable because I love the discussion more than I want to talk about myself or the program. But you asked, and I wanted to honor the question. So I'm going to hush about the program now.
Well, thank you. No, I think it's interesting. And I think it's interesting for my audience, to hear a little bit about the person, what their travel has been to get to the place where they are.
Yeah.
And, it's interesting to me because usually what has gotten people into things is themselves. Some issue that they had or a family member had, or, and same for me. I mean, we all got into this for our own reasons. And typically the reasons are ourselves and our health and our family's health and our community's health. And it kind of just goes out from there. And then we end up really being out in the world.
Absolutely. Well, and for me, although fitness has been in my blood since a kid and all this kind of stuff, when I was a power lifter, I always say, I grew into a typical fat power lifter. And I get to say that because I was that. And because I was fat. I was. Now, eating a pound bag of M&Ms as a pre-workout was probably not the best eating model, for performance. But the mindset was get big, eat big, get big.
Calories.
Yeah, calories. And I did. And I'm only 5'10", and I peaked out about 235 pounds.
Wow.
And one night I was on the couch watching TV past the bottom of my feet. I was on my back on the couch and the TV was past my feet. Okay. And I looked down, I was like, my belly was still up almost above my feet. And I'm like, David, that's enough. That's it. And it was time to reel it in, and so it didn't happen immediately. It didn't happen, I just willed it immediately and I was successful from day one. I had trials and tribulations and working through it myself. And at this time I'm in my late 20s, very early 30. I hadn't started the coaching program. I hadn't done that. I was just police officer, power lifter, that kind of thing. And I learned a lot, and I knew some things, but I learned that I didn't know a lot of things, but I did have success over a period of a year or so. And I did get off my own 50 pounds of excess. And the good news is, and you were talking about it happening or being a part of you or something happening to you, in my own journey and learning, moving past the stuff, like you say, that you hear everywhere. Right. Here's this tale and that tale and this thing that's, been passed down from almost, generation to generation. Things that were wrong. If you eat this is going to happen. If you do that, that's going to happen. Because I'm so evidence-based, I really put that into practice as I was going through this, and I challenged everything with myself. I was like, does that make any scientific sense that I can't do X, Y, Z, or I can't ever have a piece of bread. Can't ever have a piece of bread because as a male, your estrogens are going to go up. Wait, what? I mean, that really? But that's been passed down. That's not something. Yeah, that's like
that one I haven't heard, but okay.
Not surprising, but it was like, okay, I'm going to challenge that. Is there any evidence to support that? And no, of course not. So when I went through it, I went through and applied as much evidence as I could. And when I finally got to the weight that basically I am now, and I've maintained it now for 25 years, I had gone through that process myself, and I'd gone through the evidence-based process. And I thought to myself, it obviously became the early on information that I shared with my clients early on in the program. Because I was like, listen, this is wrong. That's wrong. This is, there's no evidence to support this. Do that if you want, but you're just doing it just to do it. Yeah. And so in getting my own 50 pounds of excess off, and as importantly, keeping it off, and the mindset shift that it took for me to do that, because I still am. I do not consider myself someone blessed to be lean. Okay. And I still say that, but I had a misconception back in the day. I used to say, we mortals, other than the ungifted, we mortals can get too lean, but we don't get to live here. Well, think like somebody doing a bodybuilding show. They do a bodybuilding show. You get super lean for a day. Okay. And then whatever happens after that happens, whatever the case is. Most really blow up quite a bit. And I had done bodybuilding, and I had done that. Come down, blow up, come down, blow up. So my thinking, and I was wrong then. And I said later, I was wrong when I said you can get lean, but you can't live there if you're just a normal, mortal, ungifted person. I just didn't know enough to know how to keep it going. So just really just grossly piggybacking on what you were saying, how it's like your own journey, your own life contributes so much into what you end up doing. And it's different for me, but it's also not. It holds true for me as well, because I had to learn how to do it myself.
Yes. And it's interesting what came up for me when you were talking is how a particular program doesn't work for everyone. Right. That's why there's so many of them out there, because you have to find the one that works for you and that you can live with. Yes. Right. Yes, absolutely. And not feel, some people love doing fasts all the time and, things like that. And other people like the more of the Asian kinds of things. And, there's a lot of different ways to get to the same place. You just have to find the one that works for you and that you can do. Right.
And then, what I would add to that is, at some level, there are going to be fundamentals that you find kind of universal. Yes. When it works. There are lots of things we could say. There's a Churchill quote that says, no matter how beautiful the strategy, we should occasionally look at the results. And so if I'm looking at the results, it was a beautiful strategy. It didn't work, but it was a beautiful, But if for the things that work, and when I say work, I think of it maybe differently than some, not work as in I lost some weight. I'll have clients that'll come to me and say, I've lost some weight in the past. I've had success. Good. But you're 50 pounds up from that low.
Right. That's
I would not
success.
say it worked because we haven't maintained it. My definition of worked is let's get to where we want to go. And then within reason, no one has to be, got to stay within 2 pounds, or whatever, but let's get to where we want to go and let's live there, give or take, but let's live there. And 50 pounds is not give or take, 5 pounds, 10 pounds, that's give or take. 50 is you had a relapse. And so, so when we're looking at all of these different types of programs, like you said, whether it's, you can do a number of things. You can go paleo, vegan, ketogenic, intermittent fasting. I mean, the list goes on and on and on. Whatever it may be, there are going to be some fundamentals to them that are going to hold true for the ones that really work long term.
Totally agree. Yeah.
And as long as we're doing those fundamentals that are reasonably evidence-based, there's parts of this, like I say, there's an art and a science to this. I should probably say science and art, because the science really is probably the thing we can hold the truest and the strongest. But there's an art to this as well. It's like, how do you make it happen for you? How do we help you really succeed, in the process and adapt and bring in these fundamentals into your life? And there's an art to that, that isn't just, there may not be an evidence-based answer.
Yeah.
Susan, you're a unique individual, and your life and your whatever time of period of your life you're in, whatever season of life you're in, how many hours in a day are you doing this? How much time do you have? What else do you have going on? What stressors? All of those things. You're not going to Google a scientific answer for how do I get Susan who has this and that, you're not going to get an answer. So in coaching, we have to look at the individual and say, we have to bring in that art piece, where it's like, okay, we're going to still keep the evidence-based parts in place. We got to figure out how to, and even if someone isn't coming to me, if you're doing it yourself, like you're saying, Susan, you've got to figure out how do you integrate this for real, into your life, whatever program you're doing. That's
absolutely
sound. That's sound. I'm going to throw that in there. Whatever sound program you're doing, so we're not doing the cabbage soup diet or whatever. The cabbage is great, but if you're just going to live on it 24/7, 365, probably not.
Probably not. You're right. Yeah. It's, and there have been a lot of those kind of diets out there, huh?
Still are. Still are. It's a mind-boggling. I've been again doing this 30 some years, and I look at the infomercials still and various things, and I'm like, gosh, some things just never change. The delivery medium changes, the actors change or whatever, but you're just like, gosh, it's the same message, that people want to hear, but it's not genuine. Yeah.
But it must be succeeding. Otherwise people wouldn't still be out there trying to do it.
Can't argue with you. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. That's the sad part.
Yeah, absolutely. So,
and maybe it works for some people, but I don't know.
I'm going to say no.
Anyways.
One of the reasons I'm going to say no overall is because here we are in the United States, and we've gone from 15% obesity in 1970 to 43% today. So 2.5 times obesity with all of the messaging that's been out there. Eat less, exercise more, take personal responsibility, just buck it up, pull up your bootstraps, do your thing, stay away. If you don't like McDonald's, stay away from it. If you this and that, and all of those messages and all of the food pyramids and my plate and all these things, I'm not saying they're bad. I'm not. What I'm saying is they haven't worked. Again, strategy. We should occasionally look at the results. The results speak very loudly. It hasn't worked. And I feel I have a very good handle on why and what's really going on. And so I think that, I don't know if you want to go down that path, but I think that's an interesting area to explore, because the standard messaging eat less and exercise more, calories in, calories out. I'm not saying that from a math equation, it's not accurate. Because,
right, from a science
yeah, the math
standpoint,
itself,
right?
Caloric deficit, got to take in fewer calories than you burn in a day to lose weight, got to take in equal number of calories that you burn in a day to maintain, got to take in a surplus of calories in a day to gain weight. All the math, I'm not saying that's wrong. It's correct. But the messaging doesn't work. By what definition? 43% obese compared to 15% in 1970. And we've had the messaging for 50, 60 years. Everybody knows. Eat less and exercise more. Hey, that's the answer. Why isn't it working? Because the message doesn't work because of all the obesogenic factors that we're facing. That is what I like to explore, for my clients and help them really see what they're facing, what's really going on, and how do we really work through this
right,
with that knowledge.
Yes, absolutely. Because it's not, there's a lot of people who think, oh, well, just count your calories, or here,
count the calories.
Use
this.
We've
never heard that before. I'm not saying that's bad. I'm just saying worked, we wouldn't be here.
Right. Exactly. I mean, counting your calories does work if you actually do it.
It's a tool,
right? I mean,
right?
Yeah.
It's a tool. It's a strategy. It's not a global plan. It doesn't help you face the obesogenic factors in the way that we need to comprehensively. But is it a tool that I support for a limited time? Yes. It's not something we do forever. I'll have clients that from time to time really just feel more comfortable doing it. They get so good at it. It takes them literally 2 minutes a day to do it because they get so good at it. And they just feel more comfortable doing it. As far as my position on it, I do, like you, I promote it early on, not mandatory, but I promote it early on as a tool. Let's learn. You learn. Let's help you get your own PhD in personal nutrition, like what's really going on. And then we can kind of work through that and see what's going on. But then over a period of time, and up to each person, we say, you don't have to, but we may come back to it if things start looking weird.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Or just kind of, pay attention to it in the background.
Yes.
I think that's the thing is, you don't have to go keeping a scorecard and all of that. But after a while, I mean, from personal experience, after a while, which things, if you eat a half a slice of that, then you better back off on a lot of other things for the next week.
Yeah. You can eyeball.
And it is, and it's averages,
You get so good if you do it for just a little bit. You get good at looking at something. You can look at a plate of food and go, it's 900 calories in that plate. Or you can look at a plate of food and say it's 300. Or you can look at a plate of food and say it's 1,500 calories based on what's on it, the portions, the sizes, all that kind of stuff. You really do get good enough. It's worth putting in the effort. It's worth putting in the work to do it. But I'm going to come back to the thing that we were just saying, and I'm going to say, if that alone was the answer, 43%. And MyFitnessPal, do you know MyFitnessPal, the tool that so many people use to track?
I've never used it or anything, but
it's the most popular food tracking software in the world, probably.
Wow. Okay.
Millions and millions and millions of users. If tracking by itself was the answer, the tens of millions of users on MyFitnessPal would move the needle down somehow, right?
Yeah.
And so you have to say that alone isn't enough. And you go, tell someone calories in, calories out. That alone isn't enough. Track your food. That alone isn't enough because of what we're facing in our obesogenic society. There's too many external factors driving the consumption of ultra processed food. Yes.
And just food overall, I mean, it's still it's emotional eating, and it's, that sort of thing, and not being able to, I think, to really exercise that muscle of being able to stop.
Well, you're touching on a really strong area that I'm passionate about, and that is the compulsive nature that occurs with ultra processed foods, where it turns people into users rather than consumers.
Yes.
And so the difference there is not subtle. I mean, as a consumer of something, if I want to buy a book, I can just decide whether I want to buy that book. Do I want it or not? If I do, I buy it. If I don't, pass it by. It doesn't click on any bells and whistles in my brain. I don't get necessarily a neurotransmitter release. It's like, whatever, okay, no. I'm a consumer. With the ultra processed foods and what's being eaten by, I'm going to say 80+% of consumption today by Americans is ultra processed food. What happens is, because of what the big food manufacturers are doing with food scientists trying to make it as hyper palatable as possible, they create these food-like substances. That's what I call it. A food-like substance that is hyper palatable and has this bliss point. And the bliss point, it's not, well, people like sugar. We'll just add in a bunch of sugar. You can have too much sugar and people go, ugh, I don't like that. It's too much. So they find the bliss point of sugar, salt, fat, and not just sugar, salt, fat. We have 3, 4, 5,000 industrial additive chemicals, artificial flavors, you name it. Preservatives, sweeteners, things that change mouth feel, on and on and on, that also add into the savoriness, the crunchiness, the whateverness, the mouthfeel. It also brings
the saltiness.
And also brings in this bliss point. And that's their objective, is to get it to the bliss point where our brains do light up with dopamine. We get a dopamine hit. And from that dopamine hit, with its purpose primarily being to tell us that's something you want to do. That's something you want to go get. That's something you definitely want to remember. It's definitely something you want to do again and again and again. And that happens to us with a tremendous number of the ultra processed foods that are being eaten. And it turns people from that consumer of this, I'm going to be very rational and objective. And I know what's good for me. And I know corn curls are not something I should eat 24/7 or whatever the case is. I know sugar smacks are not something I should live on 24/7. Whatever the thing is, Suzy Q's, ding dongs, ho-hos, whatever the thing is, think of all the stuff I ate as a kid. But whatever it may be for you, donuts, pizza, whatever. Rationally, if I'm to sit you down and I say, what do you think about that stuff? You'd probably go, not the healthiest. You just might say something simple like that, not the healthiest or whatever. But when the decision comes too often to either have it or not have it, the compulsive nature of this and the whole user rather than consumer, referring, of course, more so toward an addictive nature of it.
Absolutely.
Changes the entire paradigm that we have to think about this with. We can't, for the longest time, let's remember, for the longest time, the tobacco manufacturers told us nicotine wasn't addictive.
Yes.
They flat out lied to us for a long time. And it wasn't until they finally got sued and evidence was brought forth and the scientists and the internal papers were brought out where they knew this stuff was addictive. But until that was determined and until that was brought to light publicly and scientifically, doctors, health professionals thought of and treated cigarettes and nicotine differently. And thought of it more as a personal choice. Just decide, once it came out, wait a minute, this is an addictive substance and it turns people from consumers to users. Everything changed.
And it kills them.
And it kills them. Extremely harmful because of what it does and the process and how much and all this stuff. People don't moderate it. Things in moderation. Here's what I say. All things in moderation, including moderation. Because some things can't be moderated. Some things, 0 is better than 1. Not everything. And I'm not saying when people, do my program or just doing whatever on their own. I want you to eliminate everything that tastes good. I want you to never have anything that's sweet or taste good ever again? No, but there are some things for a large number of people that we're going to have to look at in a way differently than this is just food you have to control. That's like saying, you know, that crack pipe is just going to have to just smoke a little bit. That's not going to work.
No, it's not.
The drugs, the addictive nature of certain things, sometimes zero.
Food being number one on that.
And ultra processed food being being so high. The research says that 60% of what Americans are eating is ultra processed food. I actually disagree with the most recent research. I think they're behind, and I think it's going to be around 80-90% of what most people consume is ultra processed food.
Wow.
So with that being the case, and it's not being thought of as an addictive substance or a substance that creates compulsive overeaters, we're coming at it all from this moderation, just pull it up by your bootstraps, just personal choice. If you don't want to go swing through McDonald's, it's your choice. Don't swing through McDonald's. But the brain has changed. The high-end users of ultra-processed foods, their brain has changed where they are not making good choices. They are not making rational decisions. It's not their fault, but they don't know what they're facing. They're still treating it like it's just something I should be able to control.
Yeah. But
it's a drug. And for some people, again, it's not that way for everybody. There's some people that can go to McDonald's and do it moderately. It's not everybody, but we've got a much higher percentage of people than people think, and that is being talked about, who do have a significant issue with the ultra processed foods and how many places can we get it? Everywhere. Fast food, convenience stores, the grocery stores, literally everywhere. And as far as marketing on television, what foods get marketed on television or anywhere?
All of
ultra
them.
Processed, right?
Yeah.
I don't see broccoli being advertised on television. Everybody get your broccoli today. It's Doritos and it's Pepsi and it's it's whatever. All the stuff we're all very, very aware of. So that's just one kind of leg of this of creating success that I work strongly with my clients on addressing in a way that they need, because every person doesn't need the same level of abstinence or whatever. It'll vary, and what the person may want or need to be abstinent from, that'll vary. But there are enough similarities where we can think of this, treat it differently, and think of it differently so that we can really get the win, instead of just thinking of it as this innocent little thing that we can just decide, not to have when we want, or just keep blaming ourselves. I ought to be able to just say no to this.
Yeah.
And that gets repeated 500 times a year. And again, the results don't speak to that being true. The results speak to not able to control it. Right. And so, it can be addressed. This can be won. We're in a very obesogenic society. We're in that time with food that we were with tobacco, in that it's not being thought of enough at high enough levels,
right,
for what it is.
Yes.
And but we are moving in that direction. I am seeing a tide shift and some paradigm shifts in people's choices and what they're doing. People voting with their pocketbooks makes a huge difference. Big Food wants you to buy their food. So if we aren't buying foods that have all of the industrial additives and all this kind of stuff in, if we're not buying that, they're noticing, and they're going, we'll figure out, a better, cleaner, smarter way to make things that are still tasty, but that are closer to real food.
Absolutely. And actually what comes to mind too is that just the whole organic, non-organic, there are so many more organic choices out there.
Yes.
Even of the pardon my language, of the shit food.
Yeah.
that's all on organic as well. I mean, they've become aware of this.
Yeah.
Of this change in the market.
Right. Yes. Yes. Yeah. Unfortunately, for some of that, like you're saying, I think you're alluding to, for some of that, it is a bit of a marketing ploy, although they still have to adhere to certain standards to call it USDA organic and all this kind of stuff.
Uh-huh.
And I'm a fan. Generally,
Uh-huh.
I'm a fan because when it comes to the various pesticides and additives and things like that, I'm not saying they're perfect. I'm not saying they're pesticide free. I'm not saying any of that, but I'm saying that because of the standard they're held to, generally, your plant crops, your food or your animal crops or animal products and so forth are held to a higher standard. And as we can, they sometimes can be so expensive, but as we can, trying to buy more organic is probably a really good thing to do, in my view.
Oh no, I agree. And I think, I agree on the prices. And for people who that's a really high thing to worry about, right?
Right.
Then there are a lot of things that you don't need to buy organic.
Yeah.
I mean, a perfect example is avocados.
Yeah.
There's absolutely no difference.
Yeah.
Between an organic avocado and a regular avocado. So, buy the regular one.
Yeah.
I mean, so it takes a little bit of research, takes a little bit of time, a little study. But, it is doable. There are certain things that are really, really, really bad when you don't buy them organic. Just buy those.
Yeah. And what I would say too is for somebody that goes, oh my gosh, what do I got to do to try to win this and do better. There's a hierarchy, and what I would say is, I can give the definition I go by if you want, but what I would say is, whether it's organic or not, eat real food.
Yes, absolutely.
Eat real food. That's first. That's the highest priority. Then somewhere down the list a little bit will be the organic, non-organic, but eat real food. If we're eating real food, we are going to do so much good compared to eating ultra processed food. And so I would say, start there.
Oh yeah, no, I agree. I totally agree. Yeah. But as with everything, you got to do your research.
Yeah. And it's one of the reasons that people will look to a trusted source for coaching and support, is because there's so much to sift and sort through if you're doing it on your own, right?
Yes.
And so that's one of the things we help our clients do, is kind of shortcut that sifting and sorting. I've been sifting and sorting for 30 years from an evidence-based perspective.
Yeah.
So the confusion of, well, what if I heard this? I get that all the time. Hey, coach, or hey, David, I've heard this. Yeah. And what do you think about that? It takes me zero time to have the answer, but only because of 30 some years of doing what I do.
Yeah.
And we know that we can get on Google, and depending on, our own personal biases, which way would you like it to land? There's a saying, what is it? We don't see the world as it is. We see the world as we are. And so depending on how I want to ask Google and what comes out, I can be like, I'm going to go with these 5, not these other 5 that say the exact opposite. Or depending on which one you land on, you end up extremely confused, trying to sift and sort through this is bad, this is good.
Yeah.
And so we help shortcut that, and I don't really look at, honestly, I kind of use a different metric, not surprisingly, probably by now with you, that as to whether a food is healthy or good or not. I don't look at it that way. Is this food healthy? Is this food good? And what I say is, I don't look at whether it's healthy or good. What I look at is it real food? And does it work for you? Because, I think, people can have allergies. People can have various things. There could be, let's just say a real quick example could be, a real food by the definition, that I go by, is whole or minimally processed food that only contains, if it contains added ingredients, it's only those things commonly found in kitchens. So let me say it again: whole or minimally processed food that, if it contains added ingredients, it's only things commonly found in kitchens. Okay, so that's real food. So my question is it real food? I'd say spin it around, look at the ingredients. I'm not going to give you a list of 3,000 things to look for. You just have to know what real food is. And if it's not real food, it's pretty processed and probably ultra processed. Maybe not, but I'm going to say guilty until proven innocent in this case, if it's not real food.
Absolutely. Yep.
And if that's the case, then we got it next. So is it real food? So you look at something, let's just take something like peanuts. Okay. So you look at ingredients, peanuts and salt.
Right.
Peanuts, whole or minimally processed food. Okay. The natural edible parts of plants and animals, blah, blah, blah. That where the only thing that's been added to it is things commonly found in kitchens. Real food. Could be. Peanuts, salt. Salt's commonly found in kitchens. Got it. It's a packaged food, but it's real food. Okay. Next question. Does it work for you? Well, what does that mean? Well, it's at least two avenues. One, do you have allergies to it? What if you have a true allergy and it puts you in the hospital?
Right.
Okay, obviously the answer is no, it doesn't work for you. But what if you have not so much an allergy, but an intolerance to it, where it doesn't hit that level of allergy, but it just doesn't sit well with you? Gastrointestinal issues, maybe you get a little bit of a rash or whatever. Okay, does it work for you? No. But the other way that it might not work for you is you eat the jar when you sit down.
Yeah.
So it's like peanuts or whatever. Almonds, take the nut, whatever it may be, and you go, it's real. Dave said macadamia nuts. Dave said it's real food. He said I can eat it.
Oh my God.
Yeah, but you eat the whole jar when you sit down.
And there's
right.
So we know how many calories there are in macadamia nuts.
Exactly. And I love macadamia nuts. So it's like, so I'm like, does it work for you? If the answer is no, then even if it's real food, it's got to go. It doesn't have to go. It doesn't have to go, but it really should go for you to see the success you want to see, Right. Or we have to figure out how you can, not if you're allergic to it, but if it's something you just overeat, then we have to think through how you might still be able to keep it around. That's really the two things I look at. I don't, other people you might hear or other people may have heard, if it's got more than 5 ingredients, don't eat it. I don't care if it's got 50 ingredients, as long as it's real food. Yeah. Things commonly found in kitchens: salt, basil, oregano, garlic, right? Tomatoes. Keep going. And you have the tomato sauce on the shelf and it's got 10 ingredients in it. And you're like, that's all stuff grandma had, literally nothing else that grandma didn't have there, So, okay. Someone might say, don't eat it if you can't pronounce the ingredients. Well, I don't know your vocabulary. Maybe quinoa is a pretty weird word, and quinoa. A lot of people can't pronounce quinoa. No offense to anybody who can. It's a weird word, but just because someone can't pronounce it doesn't mean shouldn't eat it.
That's right. Yeah.
So none of those things work. So when I constantly look at things like, does it hold true? Remember I was saying when I was doing my bodybuilding show and I was getting lean, don't eat a piece of bread, your estrogen will go up. Does that hold true? No. Of course not. Yeah. Does it hold true if it's got more than 5 ingredients? Don't eat it. No. Does it hold true if we can't pronounce it? Don't eat it. No. Is it real food? Does it work? Does that hold true? I haven't found the exception to that in the clients that I'm constantly working with and have for so long. I haven't found an exception to that not working.
Yeah. No, I like that. That makes a lot of sense.
So not typical. But that's one of the things that I like about what we do and what we're doing in 2022 here is thinking of things differently, thinking of this paradigm of user consumer, thinking of that, thinking of what real food is, thinking of, of how we look at all of these factors for real success and being more truly evidence-based educated.
Yeah.
With the art brought in so that we can
exactly.
get the nuanced factors.
Fun.
Yeah, for
and
all the individuals
fun.
and what's going on in their world. And there's there's a science and an art. Yeah.
Absolutely. So with that, I think we should probably wrap up, and would love to have you come back on the show again.
Sure. Yeah.
So we can
anytime.
Continue the conversation, maybe talk about some other parts of it as well.
Yeah. Like what are the major struggles for people over 40 and 50 years old that other people in their 20s don't have? Love to come back on and talk about that, because there's some things there.
Hey, that sounds like a great show. That sounds like a great show. Let's get it on the calendar.
Thank you.
And we'll set it up. That would be great. So let me say what I usually do at the end of these podcasts, which is that I am not a doctor, and this is not to be seen as medical advice. And if you are having any kind of medical issues, please go and see your doctor or go to the hospital or whatever is appropriate. And so with that, I would like to thank David for being here with us, and a fascinating conversation. And I will be talking to all of you next week.
This has been Healthy Tips After 50 with Susan Rosen. To stay on the cutting edge of the most effective health strategies, subscribe to this podcast and let us know what you thought of the show with a comment or like on iTunes. Visit healthytipsafter50.com for this episode's show notes, more resources, and free offers.